Hi, everybody. I'm Holly Carter, and I want to welcome you to the Ideas Factory from Confirm It. If you've joined us before, glad to have you back. If you haven't joined us before and this is your first time, welcome. Hopefully, you'll enjoy the session today and get a lot out of it. So before we get formally started, I want to go through just a couple of things. So first off, you're just with me today. You may know that oftentimes I bring in other people and do some interviews, but I had some stuff I wanted to say today. So hopefully we'll get through some interesting content. I also wanted to let you know that I'm going to be changing the time of the live stream. So we do this every other Friday at 1 o'clock, but it's a terrible time for our friends and colleagues in Europe. So, it's the end of the day for them, say in England, it's like almost 6 o'clock, or it is 6 o'clock at night. So they can't join us, and I think that takes away some of the enjoyment. So I'm going to be moving this up earlier in the day, looking at about 11 o'clock every other Friday still. So still the same time you've gotten used to, or same day you've gotten used to. But we'll be moving it up to about 11 o'clock in the morning so that we can make it more accessible to people in Europe. So very excited about that. Probably 2 weeks, I believe, is the 18th of December. So that's when we're going to start that. So that's really exciting. Something else I was working on this week that I think is pretty cool is a webinar that I think you should check out. We're doing a webinar. We just recorded or prepared for a webinar on the customer experience side of the business. We're working on something for predictions for next year for customer experience. We've been working closely with an analyst firm on that. And I believe that is coming up on the 15th. I'm not the speaker on that one, but we've got one of our customer experience consultants who is just brilliant, Mark. He's going to be taking that one on along with, again, Maxie Schmidt from Forrester. And of course, because, content kind of falls into my world, I've been, involved in this, the setup and so on and so forth. And it's really enlightening. So don't miss that. Just wanted to let you know, look for it. It'll be advertised on our website. Check it out. Definitely worth it. So anyway, that aside, I wanted to get into the core content today and our core conversation. And I encourage you, comment back. Let me know what you're thinking. I would love this to be conversational, especially since I think we're going to be talking about something that's, I don't know, maybe I think there's a lot of different opinions on it. So feel free to voice your opinion. I will read it out loud as soon as I see them, and we can talk through some of this stuff if you have anything to add. What I wanted to talk about today was surveys. So everywhere I turn, everybody is saying we've got to move beyond the survey, get away from the survey. And to an extent, I do agree. However, I think that in reality, many insights professionals would agree that surveys are still a really integral part of the process. Now, one of the challenges that we hear very frequently is that response rates are terrible. People don't really engage with surveys the way they did, and maybe things will improve. I've also heard, a growing number of people are, especially during the pandemic, there are challenges with work, and people are looking for opportunities to make side income. And as part of the gig economy, they've kind of got some surveys going, which creates a whole different set of challenges we're not going to talk about today. Though we do have some interesting content on that, which we can always reference as well. I can always share that about ways to make sure that you're getting quality out of the surveys. But like I said, I think we still run into this problem of making sure that we're getting the response rates we need. We're getting the quality information we need. And I thought that that's something we should talk about. There are opportunities, there are ways to improve the survey process so that we're sure we're getting the right number of responses, the number of responses we need, and of course, the quality of responses we need. But today I want to talk about strictly numbers. How do we improve the numbers in the survey? And one thing that there are actually, I think there's like 3 or 4 tips that I would like to share today that I think are really of the utmost importance to make sure that you're getting the right number of responses, the number that you need in order to get the right idea, the right understanding of what the audience is saying. Before we dive into that, I think if you've joined us before, that we usually take advantage of the fact that this is a Friday afternoon and we're all working from home. And we usually do engage in some sort of adult drinking while we sit here on the live stream. So As usual, I have a beer. It usually makes it a little more enjoyable to sit and drink. So if you don't have a drink, before we get into actually talking about these tips and tricks for making surveys more engaging and more fun, go get a drink. Well, let's drink together. That's what Friday afternoons are for. So that said, go grab your drink and I'll talk really loud while you're gone. And hurry back because we've got a lot to talk about. So I'll take my sip while you get your drink. Makes for a very good live stream when you're drinking through it. So let's talk about surveys now. You know, one of the key things I think that we need to remember, and I think it's a challenge because it can be very easy to forget, and this gets us into tip 1. We need to think really long and hard when we're designing surveys about the fact that you're not just designing a survey. You are designing a survey for a human being, a person that is going to take that survey. And I think all too often it can be very easy to get involved in putting the survey together and thinking about methodologies and getting everything right and this logic and that. And we kind of lose the fact that you're designing for a human. And more than anything else, we need to think about people. What makes people want to engage with a survey? What are humans interested in? And again, it can be too easy to get wrapped up in the technology. So we need to think about a couple of things. First off, the respondent. How do they want to answer the survey? From my perspective, there's nothing more boring in the entire world than tick boxes and drop downs and so on and so forth. You're going to have about 15 seconds of my attention once you start asking me to tick boxes. And I like surveys in general. I mean, I better. It's you know, something that we're heavily involved in at Confirm It. But even somebody who's pretty okay with surveys, I get kind of bored really quickly. So we need to think about what people like. And if we look at the broader wide world, there's a lot of opportunities for collecting information in different ways. So instead of just your standard boring tick box drop down survey, what about including some multimedia? What about audio or video? If you're asking somebody to review a product or take a look at an ad or whatever you need them to be looking at and providing their feedback on, what about letting them do a video recording of their review, their opinion on it? Audio, it's fantastic. You have somebody maybe out doing maybe some sort of mystery shopping or something like that. Have them take a photograph of the product and you can see the display it's in. Multimedia is so much more engaging. I mean, if you think about it, what are you doing right now? You're sitting here watching me on some social media channel. Social media gets us involved. This is multimedia. We're talking. We're here face to face together. You can see my expressions. You can see my rapid hand gestures. I noticed that on previous videos. This is a little side note. I use my hands a lot, and I'm not Italian. And my family, my kids, and my ex-husband are, and yeah, they use their hands too. I must have picked something up. But regardless, I'm a very handsy talker apparently. So hopefully you don't find that too distracting. But back to what I was saying. We engage with social media in really interesting ways. And when we look at social media and the ways we're engaging, you've got Instagram and Snapchat and live streams on YouTube and LinkedIn and so on and so forth. It's all very audio-visual. And I think that's something we need to be very cautious that we are, in fact, leveraging. The fun thing about including multimedia type questions into our surveys goes beyond just conveniencing the respondent. Now, I think there's a huge angle there because, again, we want to really approach this from a human-centered perspective where we think about what is engaging for the respondent. But beyond that, there's a benefit to you as well. When you bring in multimedia, you have other possible capabilities and other learnings that you can find. So out of the gate, you've got information like what kind of device they've accessed the survey from. Is it something they've come to you mobile, or are they on a desktop computer? You can find out the location. You've got some location information that's from where the IP address is coming. So there's those sort of background bits of information that you wouldn't have necessarily have otherwise that you have access to. But beyond that, you then can get into some really cool stuff. So when we get into a world of audio and video, we also open up the world for things like tonal analysis. So you can listen to what people are saying in two ways. Not only do you hear what they're saying from the perspective of the actual words that they're speaking, but beyond that, you also are able to hear what their tone of voice is. So you can make determinations on what is it that they feel? What is that underlying feeling that they're trying to express to you, which is sometimes very different from the words that they're actually speaking. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they angry with you? Are they unhappy about something? There's a lot that can be revealed in that tonal analysis that goes way beyond what we could collect in a drop down or tick box on a standard survey. This is a huge opportunity. Now let's talk about video for a second. Video, obviously you can't do this on audio alone, but with video, you open up opportunities for facial emotion detection. So you can see, now combine the two, you get facial emotion and tonal analysis. So you can understand what the feeling is, what they're expressing in entirely new ways. And again, ways that you would have never gotten if you were just limiting yourself to a more standard tick box type of survey. I'm not trying to say anything bad about tick box surveys. There is a time and a place and a need for those. What I'm saying is that we need to be a little bit more creative. We need to stop and think about how respondents want to provide their feedback. Is it possible that we can kind of get out of our comfort zone and do something a little more interesting? Is there an opportunity for our research study where it might make sense to include something that allows somebody to speak to the camera, that allows them to record a video? And now, more than ever, I mean, we're all stuck at home for months now. It's been a very long time. I mean, we're, 3 months shy of a year since we started going into the initial lockdowns with the pandemic. And at this point, I think I spend probably 90% of my day every day on a Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams or GoToMeeting or something like that. I am on video all day long. And once upon a time, it wasn't as comfortable, but now everybody has just gotten so comfortable with it. Holidays are being held on Zoom. People are much more open to providing video feedback now, and maybe even an opportunity for them to be a little more comfortable because they can speak freely. They can say what they want without being limited to the simple list of items that you've provided to them in whatever kind of tick box or drop down you might use. Now, same concept kind of goes into another area, letting people speak freely. It can be very limiting in a survey when you are presented with a list of options. And more often than not, the options that you're presenting may or may not be what I'm actually thinking. And I can tell you from surveys that I've taken, so very personal angle here, very often I'll take a survey and what they're asking me may be what they want to know, but it's not what I want to tell them. It's not what was important to me. Yes, it's important to you, and I understand that, but actually it's not applicable at all to me. It's not what I want to tell you. And with that, guess what I do? I X out of the survey. I leave. I don't care. I don't want to get involved in that. I did want to tell you something, but you weren't listening. And that's where we get into the wide, wonderful world of increasing our use of open text. So maybe you don't want to do videos, okay? Maybe video analytics and facial recognition, tonal analysis, maybe that doesn't impress you. But what about just giving me an open text box to share my other opinions? Now, a lot of people do this, but sometimes I've also heard that there are many people who maybe shy away from this a little bit more than they should because it requires a lot of effort. You've got to review those statements and somehow manually code them, interpret them, and that can be a pain, especially when you're dealing with a situation where maybe you have a larger sample size. I get it. I think it's a terrible excuse, and I'm telling you flat out, it is a terrible excuse. We need to be giving people the opportunity to speak their mind. You're going to lose your respondents if you don't give them the chance to say what they want to say. It can, of course, be coupled with what you need to hear, but they need to talk to, and you'd be amazed what you might be able to uncover or open up. So opening that dialogue, allowing them to speak their mind is really important. Of course, this kind of brings about the idea that, well, we've used text boxes in the past, and we've given them this opportunity for open comments, and what do we get back? We get one-word answers, and then what do we have to go on? That's useless. I know, I've heard that too. And yes, there are some people that that's gonna happen with, but there are options to help you expand that conversation. So for example, one thing that Confirm It does, we have this thing, it's a question type, a survey question type, called dynamic open text, which is a conversational style open text. So it'll start out with a question, obviously. How did you enjoy your experience today? And then based on keywords in the respondent's answer, it's able to ask subsequent questions to kind of draw out additional information from the respondent. In the end, you end up getting a much bulkier, much more robust answer from the respondent. And that's really important, because with that, you have sufficient detail, sufficient information. And if you are working with a large sample size and you have a lot of comments to review, it gives you a sufficient amount to then justify the need for something like an automation in the form of a text analytics, which can then help you to not only interpret how the comments need to be categorized, where they fit in the business, in the research study, etc. But then on top of it, it can, in an automated fashion, analyze the sentiment behind what the person's saying. So again, we're digging below the surface, and we're understanding not just what they're saying, but what they are meaning and how it makes them feel. And we can roll our eyes at how it makes them feel thing, but the reality is it's emotion that really drives most purchase decisions. So this is important information. We need to know how people are feeling, and understanding that people are not always good at choosing the right words. Things like that tonal analysis, the facial emotion, sentiment analysis are increasingly important. We need to get below the superficial to really understand. So the next is, I think we need to think really long and hard about the fact that we need to be a little more creative in other types of questions too. So I referred to, the tick boxes and drop downs before, and yeah, they're boring. It's just plain and simple. They're just quite boring. But there are other options. You can do a lot of things that are, again, more graphical in nature, more visual, more interactive. Ticking a box is boring, right? But what if you needed information and I was able to go to a map and click on the location that I'm referring to? That's a little bit more fun. What if you wanted to show me a series of ads and get my opinion, and I could rate those ads, look at the visuals and put a rating on them, or maybe highlight certain things specifically on the image that I like or don't like? So you can have this sort of more interactive, engaging world. What if you need them to review text? Maybe you're asking somebody to read ad copy and give their opinion on it, or messaging or something like that. And you want to understand what their thoughts are, what makes them happy, what they don't like, etc. What about allowing them to highlight it? Highlighting that text in different ways to say, yellow is this is just okay, green is this is really good, red is not good, that's bad. So what about text highlighting? You can use a bullseye, have people identify when you really hit that mark versus when you're kind of outside in the fringe. Videos, show them a video. Yes, we've talked about collecting their feedback via video. I got a little tongue-tied there. But what about if you were able to let them watch a video and rate it throughout? Like, this is a really good part of the video and this is not so good. And they kind of move, a little slider around to indicate. It's a much more engaging experience. And obviously, this is not the beginning and the end of the various opportunities here. It's just what I'm encouraging really is just to think outside the box. Start to make a more fun survey. Gamification doesn't have to be strictly a game, like a Candy Crush or something like that. Gamification is something that makes people want to play with it, makes people want to get involved with it and spend some time with it. And when we involve these things like, video and audio and graphical picturesque interfaces where we can do fun things like highlight text and, mark things off on a map or a bullseye, that's pretty awesome. But the best part is, in some situations, and I'm not trying to plug too much, but I know Confirm It. So one of the things we have a lot of these capabilities, and others do as well. We call these custom questions. The fun thing about the custom questions is you can even build your own. So with us, I don't know if everybody can do that, but with us, you can build your own. So if you think out of the box and maybe you like the bullseye, but it's not quite right, you want to do something else. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not all that creative off the top of my head, but if you come up with an idea of a way to visually express a question, to engage people, or in an interactive way express a question, build it. You can make something entirely new and really have some fun with surveys. Have some fun, create some fun for your respondents. The more fun, the more likely people are going to stay engaged. Now, I've had this same conversation with people over time, and it's something I think is important because I do still see surveys as an integral part of the process, as we've already discussed. And the feedback I always get is once we start involving all these random things like videos and audios and pictures, we are now potentially compromising the integrity of the research, for one reason or another. And again, I said this before and about something else, I don't remember what now, but we can come up with excuses until we're blue. And it doesn't actually change the fact that we need to do something about response rates. So yes, there is a possibility that some of the things you may introduce could potentially have an impact on the integrity of the research. So I'm not saying this is something you have to do every single time. I'm simply saying this is something we need to consider. And we also need to weigh the value or the benefits versus the cost. Is it going to compromise the research so much that we shouldn't even do it, that it's not worth doing it? Or maybe there's, a reason to bring it in, if we're going to get more respondents and it kind of balances out in the end, so I guess where I'm going with this is stop the excuses. Yes, you know what? If you sneeze while you're writing a survey, you could compromise the integrity of your research. However, no excuses. We need to do things that are going to make people engage better. That's the whole point of the conversation today, a better respondent experience so that we can drive more, better, higher quality responses in our surveys. I would also say for the next tip, so tip number 3, so far we've talked about personally making it human. We've talked about, going on creating and using standard customization, kind of custom questions, creating those. We've talked about multimedia. Now I want to talk about making something a little more personal for the respondent based on what they're doing in the survey. So one of the most annoying things in the world is a survey experience where you go through and you answer questions that maybe aren't relevant, especially if they're questions that aren't relevant based on questions that I've already answered. And this, I feel like this is kind of going back to something that I think should be 101, but I do want to spend a minute talking about skip logic and branching. You can move people around through the survey in a way that is most appropriate to what they've already told you. And if you're not using it, if you're not considering it an engagement element, an element of engagement in the survey, you really need to think about this. So yes, you're probably doing it now. You're skipping questions, you're branching. Everybody does this. But what I'm proposing is that when we step back and we reconsider these things, video, interesting question types, skip logic, when we step back and consider these things as means of survey engagement or respondent engagement, I should say, they take on a whole new meaning. It becomes an imperative to have the appropriate logic in. It becomes an imperative to, move people through the survey in a way that makes the most sense. And it makes you stop and think about, if we're doing this not for any reason other than the respondent experience, what is the experience I want to create? And you can kind of reinvent how you're applying these logic elements and create an experience that just is so much better and more engaging for the employees. I'm sorry, for the respondents. So, like I said, the key here is making sure that you're stepping back and putting it in for engagement purposes, realizing that there's an opportunity there to use it for a different reason, putting yourself in the shoes of the respondent and thinking about, how would I feel if I had to go through these questions in this particular manner? Would it be better if? Would I like it more if I were to? Stop and think about that the next time you're figuring out what your logic looks like in a survey, and you can make a world of difference. And last but not least, I also think we need to think about respondent convenience. So yes, more people today are walking around and carrying their mobile phone, but at the present moment, more people are also sitting in front of their computers than ever before. So there's a couple of options here, but one way or the other, we need to be sure that we're conveniencing people. If you are going to be asking people for information that is appropriate to be collecting when they're out and about and on the go, your survey better be mobile. Just end of story, mic drop. It has to be a mobile survey. If they're going to be sitting at their computer taking the survey, it has to be appropriate for desktop. Simple consideration. And yet again, one of these things you're probably looking at going, okay, seriously, this is 101 information. Why are you even saying this to me? Because there's a happy medium that sits in between. And I think we need to think about that. This is not just about, should I make it mobile? Should I make it desktop? This is about thinking on how we can make it appropriate to everyone at all times. Even if you think a survey is going to be desktop, chances are the survey respondent is going to be doing it on their phone because, they're sitting around watching TV, playing on their phone, doing their thing. Or maybe they're out at the store and they see the survey. Maybe it's something that pops up when they're out and about. Maybe there's a geolocation element or something that's making it come up. Whatever the case is, you don't know where people are accessing from. And what you really need to be considering is not necessarily just exclusively mobile or exclusively desktop. You need to be considering the all-around general experience. And that brings us into the world of what's called responsive rendering. So what that is being able to deliver a survey that's going to kind of resize itself based on whatever they access from. So you can do this with just about any survey where the person will go on and the same survey from their desktop looks great on a desktop. And ultimately, if they take that same survey on a mobile, it looks great on a mobile. So this isn't just a matter of looking at the survey and saying, we need to be mobile, we need to be desktop. It's a matter of making sure that you're good at all times because we want to maximize convenience. And I'll just give you a little story around this. I know we're getting toward the end of our time together, but I'd say 3 weeks ago, I had I saw a comment on Confirm It social media from a respondent who was saying that Confirm It was not mobile and this was not okay. Of course, I responded back. I'm like, whoa, that is so not true. Confirm It is completely, absolutely mobile. We absolutely are doing this responsive rendering. You can absolutely do that. And I explained to him that there are, and I understand there are certain question types that are not easy to do on mobile. I totally get that. And I explained that to this person as well in my response. But also, this is something that people have to want to do. We're not going to, beat anybody over the head if they absolutely refuse to use a responsive survey. But it's something that the respondents are still running into. And it shouldn't be. Again, I get there's the occasional question type or the occasional situation where it just isn't going to work on mobile. But we need to be putting that consideration first every single time and aiming to always use some sort of survey design that is going to, and maybe you are or are not a Confirm It customer. If you are, you should be using responsive. But if you're not, and go reach your vendor, talk to them. Ask them, is this an option? Use it. Because we want to try and be sure that conveniencing people to be able to answer their surveys quickly and easily without having to be on a different device, which is just, that's a pain. It's just, that's not reality. So yes, I know there's a lot of considerations here. But I think, again, the respondent experience is very, very important. If we want to be driving response rates, if we want to be sure that we're getting adequate numbers of people coming back and giving us the information we need to our surveys, consider these things. Consider your audio and your video, your multimedia. Consider open text. Consider these custom questions that I was talking about, these cool, graphical, fun to use questions. Consider coming up with something new of your own. If you have, ideas, you're probably far more creative than I am and can come up with a million cool ways to do things. Do it. Think about how you're using your skip logic and branching. Think about the fact that it is an engagement tool. And please, please, please convenience your customers by using a responsive type survey so that they can always get into it from wherever they are. So anyway, I've talked at you for a half an hour, but to me, this was an important topic that I wanted to share. And I hope you've gotten some value out of it. Always enjoy doing this and enjoy seeing you every couple of weeks. We'll be back in 2 weeks, which is the 18th of December and the last live stream for 2020. I can't believe how fast the year's gone, right? It went really, really, really fast, but 2020 is almost over, and we'll see you in 2021 after that. But one more. Don't miss the live stream on the 18th. Looking forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, cheers.